The UK is doing what the UK does best, ruin everything that we like and love. And well, it has happened. The UK officially has potentially ruined gaming for, well, everyone across the world because they're idiots who want to suppress your speech, your rights, your everything because bad words hurt while, grooming gangs don't, as far as I can understand by the UK's principle.
Upcoming games will be missing features because of the UK's Online Safety Act, and this impacts you no matter where you are. So here's what's happening, right? We got loads of questions from our last video, people saying if you don't live in the UK, well, why should you care about this law? Why should I care? Well, the answer is very simple. The answer is that game development is a global thing, and when developers have got to choose between cutting features or limiting them in one region, some will actually just cut. And those are cuts that you will feel
True. Though I do admittedly think this could honestly be just for the UK. I think that that's gonna be a thing that happens more, but obviously this will impact you. And then remember, there is no such thing, oh, this doesn't impact me, why should I care? Everything impacts everyone, okay? A part of the world turning to shit is gonna in some way reverberate your doorstep and impact your life. So this is why you need to care about these things.
regardless of you being in, around, or near the UK. Here's a big update to that story that I found in today's sponsor, Ground News, which I supporting us. Let me catch you up on things. The Online Safety Act is a long gestating piece of UK legislation, and it's designed to restrict kids' access to illegal or, quote, legal.
You know what's my favorite part about the UK Safety Act? It's the fact that the UK got actually a lot of signatures saying that they don't want this, and their parliamentary system looked at this because they're mandated to do so and said, no, we're gonna do this. What do you honestly think that you're gonna impact our decisions? We are not for the people. The people are stupid. Oh, wait, wrong country. Anyway, the people are stupid, so we were not gonna allow them to choose things for their own, for themselves. And by the way, as someone who has and knows people who are working in high places in the Europe, and all of this woke shit, it's kind of an open secret that people working there are en masse. They kind of understand that the stuff going on is bad, but they're like, well, I'm not using public transportation, so I'm kind of fine, and I can just move to another country if things get even worse. That's actually an open way of a lot of these people thinking, which is insane. Absolutely fucking insane.
But harmful content. Basically, any online system where kids could interact with the content is impacted by this law. And from the public view, it essentially demands age verification from users, and then it restricts access to content for people who fail that verification. And the first full implementation of this kicked off in the summer. And we've talked about, say, its impact on Discord. We've covered how it killed smaller MMOs and forums because they simply cannot afford to adapt to this new law. They can't afford the compliance costs, and, well, the risks, the punishments are extremely high. Services like Steam are also taking on the risk of verification, and most recently, Nexus Mods unveiled their version of this content moderation, where they're restricting access to adult tagged content unless users are.
And by the way, you're probably thinking, okay, so what if a company just chooses to cut off their services from the UK? And, well, the UK probably wants that. I can guarantee you one thing, that Britain is not really enjoying the fact that people are pointing their fingers very much exactly on them and making fun of their completely delusional state of existence. Yeah, a lot of people are not fans of that in the UK, in high places. So, if people were less allowed to actually interfere with the way that Britain does things, the UK would be just more happy with that. They would be pretty happy with that. Also, there is actually another risk that the UK decides, wait a minute, we have international courts. If Steam decides to cut their services here, we're just gonna sue them for discrimination or something.
Verified. That's a bunch of what's happened. But now...
Now, granted, that's me speculating. I don't actually know if that's possible, but there are international courts that are kind of designed for stuff like this. So, I'm pretty sure Britain can technically use them.
We need to talk about the knock-on effects. We need to talk about the impact, because, well, some time has passed, and now everyone is getting to grips with this new legislation, and with the many impacts coming in its wake, because not every change will be visible to customers immediately, but even if that is the case, oh boy, they will be visible in the long run. To get a handle on this, I'm going to talk about an expert interview. So, Christopher Dring from the games business asked an important question. He spoke to Isabel Davies, who is a senior associate at a legal firm called Wiggins. And his question is, has the OSA, quote, made game developers think twice about adding certain features or functionality to their games? And here's her answer to that question. Yeah, because I've spoken to some already. Definitely. And she went on to say, or maybe they've sort of gone, we will do it, but we won't do it on first launch. And to that, she gave a specific example, and I'll just quote her directly. Let's get the core game monetization loop working. Let's make sure the gameplay is good. And only then invest in clan functionality or chat functionality, etc. So basically, a lot of those social features that people absolutely love in games, maybe proximity chat in your extraction shooter, those things, well, they now involve way more legal liability. And this is an example of the...
You know what? I blame Pokimane. I blame Pokimane, okay? She just can't contain herself, so she moans every time she plays a game with a minor. You know, in exactly the way you think she moans. And it's probably her fault. This is all probably her fault, by the way. And, like the video and hype it up. It only takes less than a second, and I greatly appreciate it. It helps me out tremendously. It's the good deed of the day. And, well, if you think that this is important, that Pokimane is secretly responsible for this, and you want more people to know that she's responsible, like and hype the video, because I can guarantee you, more people will see this video because of it. Thank you all for the great support. I love you.
Conversations that are being had at the production level for many development studios. You see, if they don't have to think about moderating chats, if they don't have to meet the OSA's requirements, then that saves them time, money, and effort. And throughout development, there are loads of little decisions like that, and they're decisions that an audience will basically never really see. And to get some texture on what that means, I'll go back to what Isabel said. So she says that indies are engaging with this process earnestly and early. Now, you may think, okay, that's fantastic, but it's not exactly framed in the way that you would think. Basically, it's more similar to how developers put aside funds, legal funds, for GDPR compliance. OSA compliance is kind of similar now. Sure, you can go and geo-block in the UK, but it still is a new cost to your budget, and the public may never know what's been lost from a game.
It's not a cost for your budget to geo-block a game in the UK. It's just your predictions for sales and revenue are gonna be less. Geo-blocking a game in the UK has absolutely nothing to do with budget.
That they enjoy. Essentially, there's a chilling effect, and chilling effects are often the most powerful aspect of any legislation.
And budget fulfillment are two vastly different things, by the way.
It's not that something becomes illegal, it's that businesses don't want to risk breaking the law, so they just steer clear of anything related to that law. And that's where the Online Safety Act could be having some harm to games. Any game that allows user-to-user interaction faces this question, and as you can probably imagine, that's a lot of games. They've now got to ask, if we want to sell in the UK, will we fall afoul of this law? And to ask that question, what you really need to do is talk to and pay for a lawyer to give you a legal read of the situation. And this will impact planning of development. This might mean cutting features. If you're an indie dev, this could be a lot of work, especially if you're making the type of small team reason.
By the way, I can actually imagine some companies are gonna make the game, and then they're gonna just cut out the parts that the UK may not like and call it a day. So, in the end, Nothing's gonna change. This is a possibility. Nothing's gonna actually change, but the UK is just gonna get a shitty fucking product that feels unfinished. That would be hilarious.
Reasonably cheap to make game that, as of late, has been going absolutely viral on platforms like Steam. So for people like that, it's a shitload of work. But if you're a bigger player, well, you can probably manage, because whenever there is new regulation, very often the incumbents are the people, even though they are being regulated, they're the people best positioned to deal with that regulation, because they have a goddamn legal budget. So let's see how, for this law, it's the smallest players who get hurt the most. A little bit of context, when we first covered the OSA, we broke down how the law works, where there is actually more than just age assurance. Companies need a record of how they've considered risk and what they've done to mitigate that risk. And as Isabel Davies pointed out in that interview, most game companies already do that kind of thing. If you use a bunch of hate speech in your Overwatch lobby, you'll be banned. If you harass another user, you can be banned, even if there are no kids around. Now, that's part of the OSA. You've got to prove that you have these rules and that you enforce these rules. Which, by the way, does mean that you should probably expect rules that exist but don't really get enforced to actually be enforced now, because the enforcement will legally matter. And sure, to the big companies, having things like your end user license agreements or PlayStation's new parental controls, those are good, those would work. And when investigating potential breaches of this law, Ofcom, the regulator involved, would look into those things, right, whenever they're dealing with a breach. They'll ask, like, did a company take steps to mitigate risk? Can they prove that their process exists? But here's what Roblox has shown us recently. And this is where things just kind of spin out and we really get a sense of the impact. Because all it takes, guys, is a few high-profile failures. You know the internet. You've been in chat lobbies. You've seen things that, if they were screenshotted and sent to anyone in, like, the political system who just wanted to make cheap political hay, you know, would absolutely go viral. That happens all the time, and it's very much happening right now. I'm sure you can think of a few contemporary cases. So something bad goes down in a high-profile game, then government and the public call for inquiry.
Okay, listen, when we're talking about Roblox, this is not a minor thing, right? Roblox is currently the most popular game on the planet, and yes, that's actually accurate. And, well, you know who plays it. Mostly PDFs. And then there's a bunch of children, I guess. But yeah, that's how Roblox works. So, Roblox getting heat for this is completely acceptable because Roblox is a platform that has actively taken steps to make the platform less safe for users by threatening and banning people who want to make it safe, which is insane. There's like so much evidence that Roblox literally tries as hard as it can to keep it friendly for the wrong type of people. So Roblox getting caught in any kind of fire is a good thing, in my opinion.
And the impact of that is that having a chat function, well, that's an automatically high-risk thing to implement internally. It means that UGC is a risk to implement. That's the sort of thing a company will be talking about internally. That's the sort of thing that will change their planning. Now, I want you to think about how this all works financially. If you're an independent developer, risk is now a lot riskier. If you're EA, yeah, you've got a legal team. You've got cash to throw at solutions. Under this law, there is no functional difference between the two. And that's a worrying thing. So indies and smaller games may skip features that you care about, like UGC, like text chat, like voice chat. And that may mean the next scrappy multiplayer game from a small team that is absolutely amazing because of maybe its proximity chat interacting with its game mechanics. Well, oh dear, maybe that would look different in the future. Maybe it's missing the sorts of social features that once would have been industry standard. But what if I told you it actually goes further than that? As an example, Discord recently announced plans to allow the integration of Discord's essentially infrastructure as your in-game chat. Right? So basically, it's Discord not just being the thing that you use, but Discord as a backend, essentially as a service that game developers could use. Now, Discord have got their own verification process. And this would then mean that, oh, if you use the Discord system that is going to deal with all of this legal compliance stuff out of the box, then great, you can just use that. And it would indeed seem like a straightforward solution for it.
I mean, this is not a straightforward solution. This is actually one of the worst things that's happening on a massive scale in the world. And that is just every time a new shitty regulation is implemented that impacts a single thing or many things, it effectively just creates the need, the necessity for a third party something to be born. And in this case, it's potentially like Discord stepping in. And some of you, most of you, like 99% of you watching this, have absolutely no idea how. Let me just give you this example, right? How many outside components do you think your average car manufacturer needs to be associated with to actually make their cars work? Tesla, for example. How many outside third parties Tesla do you think needs to be in contact with on a regular daily basis to make their production work? Take your guess. Take your guess. It's around 30K. Yes. 30 literal thousand different companies and institutions. That is insane. And this is not unique in no way. And every time you add something like this just creates more of these companies. The bloat is fucking real. And this is one of the reasons why new companies can't really spring up that easily. Because big companies can deal with all of this regulation. In fact, big companies champion this type of regulation because they know that they have the money, the resources, the everything to actually deal with these regulations. Smaller companies, they actually do see this, as stated previously, and they're like, well, we can't do this because we can't guarantee this, we don't have blah blah blah, and so on. And it ruins competition, and competition is great, as we all know.
Indies, and it actually would be, because it offloads the responsibility to Discord. But do you know what it also does? It also entrenches Discord as the backbone of in-game communication. This would be another example of a perhaps decently well-meaning law actually just entrenching incumbents and being bad for competition. That's what happens when only the biggest players can deal with the risks of a legislation or a regulation. They can even profit from those things. Because, of course, if compliance is now a problem, you can sell the solution and then entrench yourself in the market. And look, I think what Discord is doing with infrastructure is, honestly, a really good strategic move for them. It makes a lot of sense. But it would mean that, well, if you're a new game developer and you feel like you need to use Discord's solution to handle your social features, well, maybe there are things that it won't support. Game mechanics it won't support. A depth of integration that could normally only exist if you made it yourself in your game that you maybe can't have if you've integrated with Discord. That sort of thing could actually change the types of games that can get made. So while the companies with a well-financed legal department can just deal with this, it's the little guy who will suffer. But there is at least one saving grace here, and that is the simple fact that it's the largest players who will be scrutinized first, and if found to be wrong, will be made an example of. Consequences then. Here's how all this stuff will work. Ofcom, who are the involved regulator, have spent years working with these big companies, and as a part of that, they have built a register of what they call Category 1, Category 2A, and Category 2B companies who operate in the UK. And basically, which category you fall into will impact how this law will apply to you. And for the most part, they are targeting social media websites. Here's the Category 1 requirement. Basically,
of course they are.
A content recommender system and more than 50% of UK population usage, or it allows users to reshare user-generated content, and that would be more than 10% of...
Wait, remember the headline? I never checked it, I don't know, but I'm assuming it's real because it's the UK, that someone is got arrested because they looked at a meme online, didn't even share it, didn't talk about it, didn't do anything, just looked at it, and police came to them. Now, granted, for the UK, I know, this is just a Monday in your dystopian hellhole, but, for the rest of us, this is kind of wild.
The content. Category 2A requires a general search service that reaches more than 10% of the UK population, and Category 2B would require users to send direct messages to more than 5% of the UK population. Now, of all of these things, Category 1 is the only one that mandates user verification. So basically, if you fit that category, you're going to need to do user verification, and if you cock it up, you really will be in trouble. And the way this will work is that by the end of November, all categorized services will be notified by Ofcom, and when they are, they will learn their transparency requirements. Anyone who is subject to the Online Safety Act will need to provide transparency guidance. But these companies need additional action as well. And that's actually why Wikipedia recently lost a High Court challenge. You see, they were fighting against the potential to be categorized under the highest terms. They did not want to be categorized as a Category 1.
Oh my god, Wikipedia dude. Of course they're gonna go after Wikipedia. All those evil articles, my god, they need to be removed.
And the case ended with the judge telling Ofcom to consider Wikipedia's special circumstances. Now, Wikipedia didn't win, but that did leave the door open for further legislation, but it did avoid carving out an exemption preemptively. So it's progress, but it's not a victory. Now, under those terms, individual game
None of this is a victory. All of this is just an absolute failure.
developers shouldn't be subject to any of these requirements. Isabel Davies notes that most devs she talks to are already meeting their risk assessment obligations fairly well. But where it's a bit different is platform holders, though. Different story completely. That's why Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation have been making loads of changes the last while. They are trying to get ahead of this law. But there's another reason. And that reason is that it does not stop with the UK. The big multinationals covered in this story are having all of these conversations now because they are legally obligated to have them. And the UK has just been the first country with laws like this, or at least in this context. But the UK is not the only territory who's legislating, right? The EU and Australia are implementing new legal frameworks for all this stuff, and they...
By the way, this is, in an ironic way, a complete... it's an effective way to get rid of globalism by replacing it with extreme authoritarian... Fuck it, you know the word. Authoritarianism. Why can... Man, seriously. Anyway, because notice the countries that are doing it. It's fucking Australia, a literal shithole, and it's the UK, a literal, you guessed it. Yeah, and these are the places that are trying to do this first, because they don't want the rest of the world to know what kind of absolute debaucherous, insane lunacy is happening in their places. So, they're removing globalism to effectively... well, trying to become Cuba. Again. Yeah, doesn't make a lot of sense, but here we are.
Also incorporate checks like the OSA, and sites like 4chan may contest Ofcom's ability to enforce laws internationally with, like, say, US lawsuits. But that country is not exempt either. Individual states like Texas have had age verification laws be upheld by the United States Supreme Court. And by upholding the Texas law, the Supreme Court has basically validated laws in more than a dozen other states. So this will impact loads of Americans as well. It's not directly the Online Safety Act, but they are certainly kindred bits of legislation, one could perhaps say. Now, these mostly apply to websites with adult content, in say the Texas example, but it is just a matter of legislators expanding the definition of protecting children just a little bit more. And if you were around in the 90s or the early 2000s,
all of this just because parents are too lazy to actually care what their children are doing, and they're freaking out at everyone else but themselves for the actions of their children. That is wild.
I'm sure you know that about violent video games, or about how, say, the dating in Mass Effect was actually going to ruin the kids, or something like that. Now, on a federal level, the Kids Online Safety Act has been resurrected 3 times in 3 separate legislative sessions. That bill's vague as hell language has been criticized for giving regulators carte blanche to restrict content. So in this context, it is no wonder that companies are taking the UK as an opportunity. They are testing their systems now. The reason why is because they know what's coming.
I mean, you don't need to be a company to know what's coming. Also, they don't know what's coming. They fundamentally have no idea. Unless it's America and Trump is giving insider information like he has done multiple times. By the way, thank you, Trump. I made a lot of profits because if you wink wink, oh, haha, nice. Anyway, if my country's tax people are hearing this, that was a lie. Anyway, you know, I forgot where I was going with this. But yeah, it is bad. It is needless to say, bad.
And they're probably a mix of two things. One, fear. As an example, the Online Safety Act carries a maximum penalty of 10% of global revenue, which...
The crazy thing about this, by the way, 10% of their overall revenue is already, by the way, company shattering. Like, getting fined 10% of your revenue is insane, and that can completely destroy your company, depending on what kind of business you are. That already is like completely destroying. The bigger part is 18 million if it's more, which is wild. Okay? If 10% of your revenue is less than 18 million, the UK is just gonna fine you 18. This is probably the most obvious bad thing about all of this, is the fact that everyone knows this, what this entails, what this has in it, and it's wild. This is just designed to destroy small companies that they don't like at the end of the day, to a degree. Because small companies are not going to be able to pay 18 million. There's no fucking way. In any case, that was Billiard News 10 out of 10. Bye.